Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app, on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, and the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Also, make sure you check out Off the Floor. That's our Discord server, $2.99 per month. Well worth it. This is where you can communicate with Heat fans away from all the distractions of Twitter. Also, you get updates from us, exclusive Q&As. We're launching floor seats. You can get a floor seat to our stage. We're going to be doing stage shows. It's not as bad as it sounds. Check us out there. And also, I'm going to be doing a weekly column. So we're going to be putting that on the long form channel. So all of that is going to be available on Off the Floor. Make sure that you subscribe using the link in the description. And I'm also supposed to say, make sure you click through and pay because otherwise you don't get anything. So we've had to tell some people that. Also, check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network. Includes Better Edge. Use the code 5RSN. You get $20 to play. What makes this different? It is legal. But unlike the other legal sports books, there's no VIG. You're not paying, the book something just to play. And additionally, you can find the line that you want in their marketplace. So make sure you check it out. BetterEdge.com. Use the code 5RSN. Now, today's episode.
Down the Biscayne. Yikes. Five on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing. Got it all banned. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust. Inspire have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the Five Reasons Sports Network.
All right, well, the Miami Heat didn't force all their regulars to play tonight, but we do. Today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick on Five Reasons Sports. I got Greg Sylvander. Follow him at Greg Sylvander. Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. And still waiting for a part in the introduction. I have to get to Alana on this. Brady Hawk. You can follow at Brady Hawk 305. I'm adding that to the list. We got a list of things that we got to do here. All right, Brady in the intro. I think I've written this 7,000 times. This time it's actually going to happen. All right, today's floor plan. We're finally ready for the regular season. And the Miami Heat appear to be two. Tonight, no starters, no regulars up there. Jaime Jaquez has traveled. I'm still not sure why. I don't know if there was something to do in Memphis for him, but he traveled. But other than that, Nikola Jovic played. And then basically the Summer League team, the hopefuls, some Exhibit 10s, two-ways, etc. A lot of Drew Smith, a lot of Isaiah Stevens, some Khalil Ware, some Pella Larson. And they beat Memphis anyway. Memphis played their starters, their regulars for a good portion of the game. And the Heat, again, win the game. That's not really meaningful. But here's what I took from it. And what we're going to do with this episode is we're going to talk about our primary observations from the preseason because it's now over. And we're now getting ready for the Heat playing against Orlando. I will say this. I cannot remember a recent preseason where the energy was so consistently positive every time we saw them. Like it was positive. I thought media day was positive, other than Jimmy arriving late. But I mean, we're kind of past that at this point. I thought the Bahamas, where I was for their first three practices, Tuesday through Thursday, was positive. The interactions that I saw outside of practice in the casino, around the hotel, positive. The interactions that were posted on their Instagrams and all the rest of that, positive. Every preseason game, positive. Development you wanted to see from Bam, showed it. Attitude you wanted to see from Jimmy, showed it. Role acceptance from Tyler, showed it. Health from Terry Rozier and Duncan Robinson, showed it. I don't know what else you really could want to see. And then you have the younger players. Jaquez looked great. Jovic looked pretty damn good. The rookies all look like they can make contributions in the near future. I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves on where. But he showed some, I thought, improvement tonight, and we'll talk about that. Eric Spoelstra seems revitalized. Like, I just feel like he's experimenting more. He's showing more. We've talked about this on practically every episode. I know they didn't have the offs. Oh, and by the way, Alec Burks has looked pretty damn good too, who was the acquisition everybody was kind of scoffing at. And even Drew Smith, who has become this top target of derision. I'm not really entirely sure why, except that they announced his signing on the day that they didn't get Donovan Mitchell, I guess. I mean, has shown that he can be a useful player on this team, I think, and may ultimately validate Eric Spoelstra's faith in him, which is similar to, Gabe Vincent ultimately validated his faith way back when. I, I think it's been a good preseason. Doesn't mean they're going to win the conference, but this has gone about as well as, and also nobody else has gotten hurt, and Josh Richardson is about to come back, so they're going to get more depth here. Greg, anything that was missing?
No, I mean, you hit all the high notes, but I think on the court, it's important that we recognize that the other thing we saw was a different shot profile than maybe we expected. Like it was drastically shifted from maybe what we were expecting. And then the other thing is the disruptive disposition on defense. Like they were forcing turnovers. And if they do that game over game in the regular season, if that translates, those are healthy things on court. So a lot of the things you alluded to about the vibes being a certain way and people accepting roles, all of that is, I think you're right. It went about as well as it ever could. But then on the court, it validated kind of what you felt like you saw was around the team because they were playing as well as they did. And a lot of the starters got minutes throughout the preseason. They took it more seriously. You could just see it. And they are clearly trying to understand if the very best players at the top of the roster are going to work next to one another. So they're learning a lot about what they're doing, but it all looked healthy. I think that the key point though for me is watching the defense. And if that continues to trend in the right direction, that's like what they can hang their hat on to have a good season.
I mean, what do you think, Alex? I mean, we went through the list of things that had to happen. I feel like we did that episode 35 times because we were trying to get through 4 months. Don't do that to us again. And I can't think of a single thing we had on the checklist that didn't happen. Am I missing something?
Honestly, don't think so. Like we saw a little bit of everything, right? With the way that Spo kind of outlined this preseason here, with everybody kind of getting a shot to play. I think, like you mentioned, Drew, it's somebody who has been such a lightning rod, right? Like people have hated on him for so long now because he keeps coming back, but he looks so much better than he used to, right? And I don't think, like we talked about this on Playback, shout out playback.tv/5RSN. We're back on there for the games, and it was a good time. But just like we talked about it on there, I don't think he needs to be the 10th guy, right? He doesn't need to be your 10th man, but I think he's deserving of a two-way spot with what you've seen. Like I think the defense is strong, and you've known that already. The offense is not, like, I think there's been some improvement. It's nothing. It's not out of this world, right? That's what he is on offense. He's just going to get you through and not do too much. Like I still don't have a lot of confidence in him, like attacking off the catch, but he's an okay passer. Can make some shots like he did tonight. I think the shot has gotten better over time, and obviously he's just very strong as a defender, and that's very much a Heat type of player. So shout out to him. But other than that, like I don't think anything else. There's anything else where you're looking at like, oh, we haven't seen this, right? I can't really come up with anything other than like maybe you wanted Ware to show out more and play more, but I don't know. I don't really know that even counts either, because I feel like this is kind of in line with what we thought of him.
I mean, it's what I kept saying. I do remember that the training camp was, going to be a place where he might have to take a little bit of a step back, or at least, we might have to pump the brakes based on what we saw in Summer League, which was very impressive in spots, obviously, to make first team All Summer League and looked like they drafted him, that he was playing above his draft position, had the potential to, but that there's still some things in his game that if he's going to get minutes, he's got to clean up. Brady, am I missing something strategically?
I don't think so. I guess the one thing would be the fact that we kind of talked about them needing to play faster with this roster, and they have kind of hit on that in preseason. So it does feel like they're checking a lot of boxes. But I think that the key to all this, like you guys are listing all these things that are important that they have shown, but I don't even think that a lot of us were worried about that they were capable of showing it. It's always been about them consistently showing it. It's never been about them, playing a game and playing at a high level. It's been them playing consistently throughout an 82 game season. It's about consistently defending at a top 10 level or consistently, running this type of offense. Because let's be honest, they could do this in the preseason for a number of games, but like this style is taxing. So like, is this starting lineup going to be able to like run this motion offense for a long period of time? That's going to be the question. So I still think like a lot of our questions are yet to be answered, but I think it's a really great start. Just the fact they've laid the groundwork, have just put themselves in a position to allow these certain guys to play in this offense and actually finally put up points after last year was such a drag. And then the key things you guys are talking about, the young guys, 100%, I think is still going to be the thing they lean on. I just think where we were wrong a little bit is where we were kind of pushing these young guys to be the reason that they're a higher seed or the reason they're a higher ranked offense. I think we put a little bit too much on them that I think they just have to be really good role players. And maybe Jaime's in a different state because he's got the ball in his hands a little more. So I think he has to be the guy that pops off the bench. But also, we haven't seen these bench guys mix in with these starters yet. Like they're running these lineups that it's so much yet to be seen. But I do think a lot of these guys that we were pushing in this direction just have to be really solid in their role. And that's what Jovic was in this preseason, just being a connector, solid on defense, being a good passer and all of that stuff. So I think it really was a solid preseason. I think it for a lot of people heading into the season and having doubts about this team, about this like being another one of those seasons as it was last year, the least you could say about this team in the preseason is one, they're going to be a little bit more fun to watch than they were last year, just because I think the preseason showed that they do have a little bit more upside to being a more fun team to watch. And the second thing is something I've hit on before is they look like they're having more fun. Like once again, it is the preseason. We're a couple games in. We haven't even hit game one of the regular season, but it seems like they're enjoying themselves a little more than they were last year when it felt like there was the Dame hangover. There was like the Kyle stuff. There was the trade midseason. Like, there was so much stuff kind of laying over them that the question was how the Jimmy thing was going to like impact them. Doesn't seem to be impacting them in a negative way yet. He seems to kind of really be a light in this locker room right now. So if that continues, I mean, this is a really good start to the season, in my opinion.
This doesn't feel like it's about the Heat at this stage in terms of where the fans are coming from. It feels more about their concerns about the top of the East. It's more okay because I keep seeing that because I do think fan sentiment has changed. I feel much more excitement. Our download numbers are going up. Okay, I mean, it's because the season's starting. We don't have to keep replaying the same 6 episodes, but part of it is I think that there is general excitement for seeing what this will look like, which we weren't sure was going to be the case, honestly, after all the talk of running it back and everything related to that. But I do think that there are two things that are really holding people back on this, and then we will get into some of the specific roster stuff on the other side of the break. I think the first thing is, and I've mentioned this many times, I think it's the schedule. I think that early season schedule, they are going to get absolutely tested from the start. And again, the 3 road games they have at the start of that trip, the 2 games in Indiana, even at home, starting with Orlando is not easy. This is a team that's going to frustrate them offensively because they're very good defensively. So they're going to get tested right away. This offense, they're going to make it work. They added KCP to a team that was one of the best defensive teams in the league already. So that's going to be a challenge. And then they got Sacramento coming in, which is a pretty decent team during that early season. So there's some good teams coming in. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is just, again, that idea that, okay, maybe we'll get the internal improvement. Maybe we'll get these adjustments. Maybe we'll get a positive attitude. Maybe Bam's going to shoot some threes. Maybe we're going to get some deflections. But Boston returned everybody. New York added Mikal Bridges and Karl Anthony Towns, okay, and Philadelphia added Paul George, and Caleb Martin for what it's worth, okay, and Eric Gordon, and they've built out their bench, and I think that's the thing that is capping this is that, all right, well, looks like they could be in the mix with Orlando, Indiana, Cleveland. I think they're going to be in the mix with Milwaukee. All right. But, I think that's where we're at with this. Is just this conference is fragmented. We've done these episodes. There are 5 teams. I mean, Cooper Flagg is supposed to be really good. He's not even necessarily the number 1 pick of the next draft if you're following people today. Like that, this is a loaded draft coming up. There are going to be 5 teams in the East that just pivot to tanking, like right away. And that's going to create a floor for the Heat. But then there's also seems to be a ceiling. And that's where I think there may be fan frustration if this team looks pretty good, looks better, but it's kind of like they're locked in this 6 to 8 spot for most of the season, and that's where the start plays into this. All right, on the other side, though, we are going to get to specific roster stuff. There's not a lot to get to, but I mean, there was a spirited debate on playback tonight about a two-way spot. That's where we tend to get to, and that's why we have to bring all four of us on to settle that. Before we do, though, great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, Water Cleanup of Florida. Well, they'll settle you up if you've got problems in your house, leaks, other things along those lines. Get in on the preventative maintenance because we can see, obviously, in South Florida, Central Florida, everywhere, always subject to storms and other weather disasters, and that, of course, can affect your home or place of business. So check them out at Water Cleanup of Florida. You can find them at WCUFL.com. More than 100 5-star reviews on Google. Michael Robert and this team will take total care of you. And again, at the end, they'll do a damage assessment for you, and they'll be fair with you. That's the one thing we hear about them all the time. Just good people, based in Boca Raton, service the entire Tri-County area. It's WCUFL.com. Water Cleanup of Florida. If you got the schmutz,
They got the guts.
oh, regular season ready. All right, let's get to the big debate here. Okay. We've talked about rotation stuff. We'll probably do that again before season starts. And we've talked about the staggering and all that. The starting lineup is settled. We know that Jovic is going to be the starting 4. They're going to roll with Rozier and Hero at the top. That's where we're headed here. Duncan, Jaquez, Highsmith appear to be your core 3 off the bench. Does anybody disagree with that based on what we've seen? Like if we say these are the 3 guys that are going to be in there every night?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Beyond that, primary big to start the season off the bench, probably when he's healthy enough and they don't feel they need to rest him, is Kevin Love. Do we all agree on that?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So that's your 9, right? I'll start with this before we get to the back end roster. Do you think, Brady, I'll go to you first on this. Do you think he's going to consistently roll 10?
No, I don't. I know that's kind of been the question this year. I think with a deeper team, you put yourself in a position to run 10. But I think we're also blinded by the fact that they're running this, like I keep mentioning, like these 5-man units in and out hockey style. That's just not going to continue. Like they're going to stagger way more. And I think they're going to get to a spot where you're not talking about, backup point guard, as we say, because there's going to be so many ball handlers in the lineups at a time. And I just think they're going to just find lineups that work. I mentioned before, like the Terry and Bam stay in, Jimmy and Tyler, Rocky with Love, like all that stuff, et cetera, et cetera. I just think to start the season, at least they go 9. But I think at a certain point, the only way that you're going to keep these guys fresh, like, and the whole thing is availability, you're not going to like lean into availability and then play 9 the whole regular season. So I think at a certain point, you're going to have to either play 10 or change up your 9, where it's kind of mixing guys in and out a little bit more often. But the question then becomes who's the 10th. And that's the reason why I do think they can play 10, is because we can have an actual debate of who's the 10th. Like there's about 3-4 guys that could potentially be the 10th guy. So that leans into a roster that can play 10.
And the one thing I don't think they'll have is I don't think they'll have a lot of griping about playing time behind the scenes because the nature of their roster with having some guys like, say, Jay Rich when he's back, who's a little more late career, and Burks, who kind of understood the situation when he signed, or having younger guys who they're going to be very clear with them. You're going to wait your turn, but there are going to be opportunities. I don't think we'll have that kind of dissension or anything like that. It seems fairly clear. Alex, if it's, I mean, we didn't see Burks tonight, but he's been good in the preseason. That's something else that I mentioned. Jay Rich is close. So, I mean, it would seem to me like Eric's going to take a look at some guys, right? Like, even if it's not, which again goes against my whole thing of, well, they got to get off to a good start, so they got to play a clean rotation and all the rest of this. But I also do feel like he may look at, okay, I'm going to look at Burks in this game. I'm going to look at Jay Rich in this game. I'm going to see maybe Larson gives us something in a small period of time. Maybe we just need a disruptor defensively for 5 minutes, and we're going to throw Ware in there and see what, have him blow stuff up, basically. I mean, could you see that?
For sure. I think that's he's capable of doing that this season. I think he can absolutely run 10. And, if I think that would probably be the best way to go about it, just to preserve everybody. But I understand that like the 9 guys, probably that's like the core right there. And like Brady said, there's multiple guys there in that spot. And honestly, like for a second, it felt like Burks was that guy. but then he, Spo is playing Drew Smith just as much, right? And not to mention, like you already said, Jay Rich, and then you've got Larson. So it's just so much to consider. I think he's got more than enough to play 10. And it's going to be really helpful for the inevitable nights where they've got multiple dudes missing. But when everybody's healthy, he can, there's a plethora of options there for real. I think Burks has been positive, like you said. I think that the shooting, has always been real with him. I think if he's a 10th guy in that rotation, then I think you lose some of the stuff that you were concerned about with him. We're like, oh, sometimes, he gets a little bit too caught up doing stuff on ball. And it's like, no, he's really just playing a role, and you're seeing the shooting, you're seeing occasional, like putting the ball on the floor and swinging it or attacking the basket. But most of the time it's like it's a low usage role for him. So I think he fits pretty seamlessly there. The defense hasn't been bad. And then you look at Larson, like the defense for him has been pretty strong, especially for a rookie. And he's been much more willing to shoot. Like he got up a bunch of shots tonight. And of course, that's not representative of the role he'd play if he was the 10th man. But like you've seen the stuff that you want to see with him, right? Like he's shown a little bit of everything. And he's shown that, like, okay, like I'll put more shots up if that's what you want me to do. Like I'll take those open ones. And you can make the case for him. Like I really do think he has a strong case for 10th man, not only because he's somebody they're invested in, right, in his future, but he looks like somebody that can play right away. So I think they should go 10, in my opinion. And I think, I guess it's about preference at that point, because I think Burks, Larson, Jay Rich, when he's healthy, those guys have a strong case. And look, even Drew, like I said, I don't want him to get that spot, but the guy can really play a role. He's not gonna do it in an extraordinary way, but you talk about a disruptor on defense, like he can do that at the guard spot. He's a fantastic defender, and of course Ware, but the Ware thing is just a little bit more up in the air because you would have to find creative ways to play him if you were going to play him on the same night as Love, and I just don't know how often that would happen.
How much, Greg, do you think Hillel Ware is going to contribute to winning in the first half of the season, or even this full season?
I think in very short spurts, they may try to go to him. I mean, obviously, people know where I stand. I think he should play in front of Thomas Bryant immediately, because and we've heard people in the organization speak openly and not say this is a championship contender. If this is just about a playoff contender that we're going to see how much we can push this thing and how good it can be, then why not play the young kid? So I wish that he would get more minutes, but I think inevitably Kevin Love will be the one who initially starts getting those bench minutes. And then in terms of like how much he contributes to winning, that's going to be hard to quantify for him, because I think he's going to have to do it in short spurts. Like you said, maybe disrupt the energy of a game. Kind of if they're seeing a team just get to like it's a layup line against them, they put him in for those type of things, or injuries. So I'm not expecting much initially, because I think that there's other guys that can make up a 10-man rotation ahead of him. And it looks like Thomas Bryant, no matter what I think, is ahead of him in the rotation. But I think he'll ultimately get spurts throughout the season to contribute, probably to a lesser degree than Pele, but he'll get spurts nonetheless.
Brady, who would you say is the most variable player towards their success this year? Who's the one that, in other words, again, is the most variance in terms of what he could provide and what it would mean?
Specifically the young group, or this could be anybody?
Anybody.
Honestly, I kind of think it's Terry.
I was just okay. We agree. All right.
I think Terry would be the guy that kind of pushes you over the edge, because if you get an efficient Terry Rozier and active defensively, generating steals, doing the stuff he was doing in the preseason, that changes my thought on this team, especially in the regular season. Like I think they're a much better regular season team, puts everybody else in a better position. But it's legitimately the one area of the offense that I do think this team hasn't had And that's why we liked the acquisition at the time, which is the fact that he could just go get his at any given moment. Like he could just create a shot. You could be sitting there watching him take a shot that is horrible for 98% of the league, and he makes it. Like he almost looks more comfortable taking those shots than a wide open one. That I do think just like if you can get that version for 70% of the regular season, that like just controlling the offense and tough shot making, all of that stuff, that makes Tyler better. That makes Bam better. That makes Jimmy better because I've talked about the 2-man action with those guys. I think it's a lot on him.
I'm just laughing when you said that because he got offended when I basically said what you just said, which is that there's that that basically he's a bad shot maker in a lot of ways, and that's not a negative. That's the way he plays his game. But I think he's taken that a little bit that way. And we'll close here, and then we're going to start getting ready for the regular season with a series of pods this week. Alex, when you look at this team, what is the one thing? And you can't say injuries. You can't say injuries. Okay, we're taking that off the board because we know that's going to happen. It's the Heat. But what is the one thing that could sink them in the first, say, 20 to 30 games? How are we looking at a 13-17 start or something like that?
The offense doesn't keep up on the level that you thought maybe it could because of the way this preseason looked, and it goes back to like not just below average, but just bad. Like they're missing threes. They're not generating as many paint touches because people are leaving maybe Bam and Jimmy wide open. They're not respecting it quite as much, and that's the adjustment. I don't know. That's kind of that's my first answer. But 3-point variance is everybody is subject to it, not just the Heat. So they could also have a really hot shooting start. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I do think, like you mentioned, just about all the boxes have been checked off. And I mentioned where like he's looked pretty good in the times he's been out there, and I think sometimes it's like almost just a byproduct of who he's out there with, right? Like you see him out there with Stevens tonight, who I think is deserving of a two-way spot in my opinion over Christopher, even though I like him and I think they should still keep up with him as far as like him being in the program and with the Skyforce and all that. But like Stevens and Ware together was phenomenal. I think him just being with a point guard who can take advantage of his rolling ability, that would be nice. That would be nice for the Heat. And the only other box, like you guys talk about Terry there, I think he looked awesome defensively, like for what you expect, along with Tyler. I think they both like were much better than like the general expectation from him on defense. I think Tyler actually, like, kind of contrary to what a lot of people were talking about, I think offensively he has done a great job adjusting, and I think that's a huge positive. Like he's making quick decisions. I think just more of that growth that we've been talking about, more off-ball growth, and it doesn't just mean catch and shoot threes. And I think that's the stuff that you're seeing there. It's just easier. It's easier for him, I think, to get an advantage and take advantage of it if it's him playing off the catch as opposed to having to create the advantage. And not only that, he's got more spacing now because of Bam, coming out to the three. So, like, I think you're seeing all these things we talked about. We've seen Jovic take advantage of smaller guys. All these things are coming into play. The only thing that I would maybe nitpick at is Terry and how he adjusts, right? Like, I think I still feel good about it because I think, like you guys talk about, that shot-making aspect, that playmaking aspect, being able to generate the paint touches, it's valuable for them, especially with him, defending the way he has and being active. I just think, like, so far, I think Tyler has found the better balance. If you wanted, like, if you were to ask between the two, I think Terry still shows off like the stuff he traded for, but I think the results and the process, I think Tyler wins at that, just because the role I think is almost a little bit more clear. Whereas Terry now, it's like, am I more on ball? Like, how much more do I got to be off ball? How much more do I got to be on ball? Where I feel like the answer is clear with Tyler, and he's just playing into that.
That's fair. All right, so let's do it. I'll let Brady and Greg close this actually because Alex said it. I know for the two ways. So for the two ways, Alex, Kashad, in your view, Kashad Johnson, Isaiah Stevens, and Josh Christopher, right?
Drew
No,
Smith.
Drew Smith. So you
I wouldn't-
did you did stick with Drew. I mean, it's going to be. It's going to be Drew. Like, I
I
mean, he's
think
been
Josh
playing
is
as like the 10th
deserving.
or 11th guy.
He's
Okay.
deserving. But those would be my two if I had to pick. Like if it was my decision, I would probably just go with that. I think they're more utility fits for the Heat if they end up being called up. I think the Christopher fit is still a little bit murky, and I like him. He's just there's some erratic stuff to him. He did some stuff tonight. The defense was there. The active hands were there. But how does he fit with everybody else? Is my
Right.
question with him.
No, that's fair. I mean, what they do with these guys is how are they going to fit with their best players if they need to plug them in? Greg, who would you keep?
I'm aligned with Alex. I would keep Stevens, even though the numbers in the box score don't necessarily look like Christopher's exactly. That's who I would keep him over. I'm sold on the fact that Drew Smith is going to be a part of our lives. So here we go. And he also, frankly, has had a good preseason. So he's played well and he's filled his role and he doesn't make a ton of mistakes. So off we go with him. But that's where I land. I thought Josh Christopher would make the team heading into this. I heard that he's had a really great summer, so it's not a knock on him at all. I just personally, when I look at this roster and what could be missing depending on who gets hurt, I'd like Isaiah Stevens to stay in the program as much as possible. So however they get that done, that's what I'm hoping for.
Does Christopher look better to you than Nasir Little?
Yes.
Okay, but the contract situation makes it complicated, right? Because that's what people are going to ask. They're going to say,
Yeah.
Nasir really didn't show a lot. And Christopher did. They're both former first round picks.
Hey, Little had a
Christopher's
good game
younger.
today too.
He did. No, it's fair, but I think over the course of all of this, and maybe part of it was Christopher played with all these guys in summer league too, and then Spo kept throwing him out there with them, so there was this familiarity with that group. He knew what his role was. I mean, Brady. I mean, Greg. Before I go to Brady on that, like Greg on the just the logistics of that, right? Because Nasir, they have until what, January 7th or something else along those lines to
Yeah, whereas
make a
I mean they'd have to
decision.
make a decision on Christopher as a two-way player in a different time frame. So it
Right.
is a weird situation there, and they can't necessarily give Josh Christopher a standard deal. So like that's not an option either. So
Right, right. And so it makes it tough. I mean, Brady, is Christopher the guy but the concern with Christopher is I do think other teams are going to look at him. I just think he's done enough, right? He's a former first round pick. Like, I don't know that I like Isaiah Stevens a lot. Okay, I really do. But I'm short and he's not that much taller than me. And I just wonder, like, I don't know. I'm struggling to see it at this level consistently. I hope I'm wrong because he seems like a great kid and he has he has a unique skill set. Like, he is an elite passer. We haven't seen a lot of those here, honestly, in recent years. So I like him, but I don't think he gets picked up as easily as Christopher does, right?
No. Uh, and I think I'm actually leaning in the direction a little away from you guys. I think I would keep Josh Christopher around. I kind of still am a fan of the upside. I'm a fan of the fact that when I look at, you kind of mentioned if a guy goes out, I think he can kind of slot in for certain roles and not demand the ball, because that was kind of my question coming in. It was kind of the issue with RJ Hampton. It was like because if he
Mhm.
comes in, I don't see him being a guy that can come in and be like a high level role player off the ball, like, and play that role. Josh Christopher has, like, he doesn't demand the ball. He really defends hard. Like like that's kind of been the decision. Like, if he wasn't defending at the level that he was in summer league and into this preseason, I would be where you guys are. But the defense kind of put me over the top a little bit, that I do think I would keep him around. I think he's actually somebody that could play games when guys do go down on some of those nights, because you kind of need that pop. Like, how many times did they play their two-way guys when they got a bunch of the rotation guys were out, and they didn't have that like extra shot creator or a certain play, like they just had a bunch of like high floor role players. At some point, you have to have the one high upside guy that can pop, and he's that guy. Drew Smith, I just think, stays in the mix in general. Like, he's going to play actual rotation minutes at certain points of this regular season. And the swing player to me is Keyshawn Johnson, because I don't look at him as a two-way player. Like, I watch that guy play basketball, and I'm like, he's going to be here for a while. Like, I don't see him leaving for a good period of time. And so the Nasir Little thing to me is like, I don't see Nasir Little sticking on this roster in a roster spot. And it's nothing on him, because I think he played a really good game today too. but Keyshawn Johnson's ahead of him in the pecking order. And it's like, if anything's going to change here, and we're talking about a third two-way, it's gonna be Keyshawn Johnson getting a roster spot, and it's gonna be then you could add Isaiah Stevens to the two-way, and there's your full roster. I think that's ultimately
you don't think it's going to be Drew Smith getting a roster spot? Because I think it'd be that too.
I think it could be.
I'm triggering people, but I'm just telling you, Spo loves him, and actually he's being validated because the guy had a good camp. He did. Like I know the limitations, but for what he wants him to do, and I saw someone else post this, but like a guy to play with alpha type. I'm sorry, Alex, but it's late. But I forgot who said it. It might have been Coach Lou from Ivy Heat Beat who said this. Like a guy who's going to sort of just play off of guys as a alpha, play off the alpha role players, not get in the way, and just do his job defensively. Like I could see games where their guards can't guard anybody. There's going to be games like that, and Spo's going to throw Drew Smith out there for a period of time, like he did Gabe. And this came back to because when we did the podcast about Drew Smith and why he got the roster, why he got a spot, and why Kane didn't get elevated, I was told by people in the front office, they're like, "Look, Eric forced us to keep Gabe at a certain point." Okay, I mean not forced, but he was the advocate, and everybody's like, "Okay, we don't know if he's a fit here." And Heat fans were crying when they didn't re-sign him a couple years later. I don't know. Everybody trusts this head coach unless he makes a decision on personnel for a player that he likes for his system, and then all of a sudden they don't like the player. And I'm like, but he's the best coach of the league. There's this paradox I don't understand. I think Drew Smith will have a standard spot by the end of the year.
Oof. It's a pretty good prediction. I'm not going to lie. Like, I could see it.
Agree.
My hot take is I think Keyshawn ends up getting it before Drew Smith. I think that's how fast this rises.
What if they make a consolidation trade at some point?
Well, that would be how they can keep both of them too. That's really the only way they could keep Nasir Little at this point. Also,
right?
Maybe find a home for Thomas Bryant.
I know.
He's found a home. It's the third string of Heat's.
Well, he's the guy who's going to basically take the slings and arrows. Because he's going to be playing ahead of Ware, and we knew this. Like he's the new Dedmon, except he's better than Dedmon, isn't he?
Dedmon
maybe not.
Not
peak, no, Dedmon did peak. Dedmon was literally the best player in a playoff game. So that's
2021 Milwaukee Bucks series. Dwayne Dedmon.
Like everybody forgot
the fact that we had a whole off season and we never did like a top 5 backup bigs of the Jimmy era.
Oh no,
we missed out on that one.
Next Sunday.
That's scummy. Well, I mean, Keyshawn Johnson's going to be a backup big soon if Spoelstra goes back to the small ball offense. Anyway, thanks to Alex, thanks to Brady, thanks to Greg. I don't know why we were all here tonight, but we will have other episodes over the course of the week, and maybe posting an episode of The Force as well with Matt and Major. They get into all the guys who are kind of competing for these roster spots as well. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.